Well, now that we've seen the basics, how to use both the style attribute and the style tag to be able to set up our rules, and how to deal with things like color, there's one other subject that I want to pay special attention to, and that is working with fonts. When we're dealing with text on an HTML page, there's usually two big things that we're concerned with, and that is size and which font is used to display the text. So let's handle those in order. We'll deal with size first. What I'd like to do is use the paragraph tag and set the size that we want to see our paragraphs displayed on the screen. The main CSS property that we're going to be using to set that is the font-size property. So let's go ahead and put one of those inside of our paragraph rule. Font-size. We'll use a semicolon, and then we simply need to set a size. Now, what's different about this property is there's several ways that you can measure that size. There are a few common ones, and I'm going to use the most common one first, pixels. We're basically measuring dots on the screen. This is probably one of the most straightforward measurement systems that you can use because our screen is made up of dots. So I could, for instance, set the font size of paragraphs to, let's try something really big here so that we can see it. I'll set it to 20, and I want to use pixels as a measurement, so I'll use px at the end of it. I need a semicolon to end the rule. I'll save my change. And let's go back out to our document and refresh it and see what it looks like. You can see that all of my paragraph text got bigger. Even ones that are being formatted by span tags or div tags, like we had in this case for the top paragraphs. Now the default text on most browsers starts off at 12 pixels, but you can see that this is a few pixels bigger than the original. Now let's take a look at some of the other measurements. Instead of px for pixels, you could use a measurement of IN for inches, or cm or mm for centimeters or millimeters. Now a 20-inch font size is going to be pretty big, and generally I personally don't use these types of measurement systems because also we have a problem when we translate inches to screens. We can have a 10-inch screen and a 40-inch screen with the same resolution or the same number of pixels. So an inch really doesn't mean anything when we talk about documents that are viewed online. There are even some traditional printing mechanisms. For instance, you could use PT standing for point, or PC for pica. Now, those are both typical printing measurements, but they're also based on inches as well, and are generally used more for printing. There are, however, a couple of other really interesting sizing mechanisms. Now, one that we don't use for text is just a percent. Percent is kind of interesting because we need something to measure as full 100% in order to have something be 20 or 50% the size. And that's why we generally don't use the percent value for text. But we have something very similar. We have a measurement called ems. Now, the first time you see this, you might be a little bit confused because it doesn't relate to normal measurements that we're used to. But the basis for this type of measuring system is 1em is whatever the current browser font size is. Now, we're talking about basic text, and for most browsers, that's 12 pixel text. So if I used a measurement in my font size of 1em, that would be whatever the size was, 12 pixels. If I used 2ems, that would be twice the size of the current font. Now, the reason that this is important is that our browsers are set up so that users can determine whatever font size they want. So, for instance, if you had bad eyesight, you might want to bump the size up on your browser, and that way every website you come to will have slightly bigger text to accommodate you. Notice that if I, as a designer, design my site using pixel dimensions, this won't work so well. So users might feel left out if they want to make the text on your particular site bigger. For the purposes of our lessons, I'm probably going to stick to pixel measurements because it's a great place to start. It's easy to measure, and you don't have to worry about original sizes or changes in the layout. But as you advance and work on more complicated sites and pages, you may want to try out the em measurement. Generally, a good rule of thumb is to pick a measurement system and stick with it for all the text on your site. That way you'll stay consistent and you won't have to switch your thinking over from one system to another as you move around your page and set up your styles. For this document we're working on, I'll go back to a size of 16 pixels for my normal paragraphs. And let's go ahead and set up font sizes for the three headings that we see used here. We've got an H1, an H2, and an H3. I'll start at the bottom. I'll go down below my style rule for the paragraphs, and I'll add an H3 style rule. Again, I need the braces. I'll go down a line, and I'll add the rule. We'll use font-size, a colon, and I'd like this text to be bigger than my normal paragraph text, so I'll set it to 18 pixels. Semicolon at the end, close off my rule, and we'll go ahead and copy that and paste it in again and use that to make an H2 style rule, which will be 20 pixels. Now we already have an H1 style rule up here at the top, which includes our color. So let's just clean this up a little bit. Generally, I can line up styles one after the other, but I like to put them down on a second line. So I'm going to go down below the color rule. We'll add a font-size rule, colon. I'll set this one to bigger than the H2, so I'll set it to 24 pixels. We'll end it with a semicolon and put the brace on the next line. And there you can see it's very easy to find my styles and find the rules that are associated with them if we lay them out like this. I'm going to save my changes. Let's go and refresh our page, and we'll see how it looks with our new heading sizes. You can see that the H3 is just a little bit bigger than the paragraph text, going up to the H2 and then the H1 with different sizes for each.